Hello lovely people, today I just wanted to talk about a poetry collection that I read recently, which is this one by R.S. Thomas.
Sophie Vlogs.
I previously read R.S. Thomas, a collection of his work for Deweython, which happened earlier this year. I will leave a link to that down below if you want to hear my thoughts on that collection. That collection was poems based on Impressionist paintings in the Louvre, which was really interesting, and I really enjoyed exploring the ways that he'd interpreted the poems versus how I interpreted the poems and that sort of thing. And that made me want to read his other poetry and just see what he is like as a poet on his own right. This was a really interesting collection to read. Essentially, as with all poetry collections, some of these really worked for me. Some of these I was like, it's fine, but it doesn't touch me or anything. So the first topic I want to talk about is sort of like his view on peasants. And I'm using the word peasants because that's the word that he uses a lot in these poems. He's done a lot of poems that are about usually men, and their relationship to the landscape of Wales, and it being this thing that is so tied together. He doesn't often do poems which are just about nature without any presence of man in them. A lot of the time it's to do with the nature and the landscape of Wales, but it's very much to do with the way that the workers tie into this. There are a number of poems that are exploring peasants working the land and that sort of thing, and it almost feels like he has this envy of their connection with place, because a sense of him that I got from these poems was of him being, he's caught up in the learning he's had and the books he's read and this worldly knowledge that he has versus this simplicity and connection with place that the people of these villages have. And there's almost a wistful yearning on his part that he wishes he could shrug off all of these things which he's built up, and just have that same connection, but that it's impossible for him, or that it's something that he struggles to do, that sort of thing. This also kind of related to this view on his struggle with religion that I really felt was throughout this. So my partner told me that he was a priest, which was so interesting because there are some poems in here that really feel for example, one that really struck me was A Priest to His People, and it's about this priest railing against these people who are in his flock that he seems to think are they don't connect with the sermons he's preaching. He's bringing them these words and it goes over their heads. But then as the poem goes through towards the end, I have taxed your ignorance of rhyme and sonnet, your want of deference to the painter's skill, but I know as I listen that your speech has in it the source of all poetry clear as a rill, bubbling from your lips, and what brushwork could equal the artistry of your dwelling on the bare hill. There's that combination of those two things I'm talking about, where it's he's got all of this knowledge and he has studied the Bible and he's trying to give it to them, but then they don't need it because they already have it. They have this connection with their place, they have this connection with God. It's just they don't necessarily have it in the same way that he has it with all of these learned associations. I was also so compelled by this struggle that he seems to have with his faith. He's obviously devoted enough to God to become a priest, and yet so many of these poems, some of them are so angry against God. There's one here which is called In Church, and it's about trying to analyse the quality of silence within church, but the final few lines are: there is no other sound in the darkness but the sound of a man breathing, testing his faith on emptiness, nailing his questions one by one to an untenanted cross. And then there's another one which is called The Island, and God said, I will build a church here and cause this people to worship me and afflict them with poverty and sickness in return for centuries of hard work and patience. And its walls shall be as hard as their hearts, and his windows let in the light grudgingly as their minds do, and the priest's words be drowned by the wind's caterwauling. And this I will do, said God, and watch the bitterness in their eyes grow, and their lips suppurate with their prayers. And their women shall bring forth on my altars, and I will choose the best of them to be thrown back into the sea. And that was only on one island. You would read these poems and I would read this out of context and not be surprised to hear that he is a man who doesn't have faith. Sometimes these poems read as if they're coming from someone who does not believe in God, and yet there are also these poems which completely contradict this, and he seems like a man who struggled with a lot. So he seems like someone who struggles to understand his place within Wales, even though he loves Wales. I know that, for example, I know that he was a very staunch Welsh nationalist. I know that he learnt to speak Welsh later in life, which is why he writes his English in poetry, because although he loves the Welsh language, he couldn't express himself through poetry in the Welsh language. And I can see how that in itself, for someone who is such a staunch Welsh nationalist, must be such a source of like sorrow and anger and that sort of thing. And that's also portrayed in his view of Wales. Like, just to slightly go off topic, is there are also poems that are about Wales which are quite damning of the Welsh and the ways their relationship with the English and like the way that they judge the English for certain things, but then they also like are, there's one poem and I can't remember which one it is, otherwise I would find it and read it to you, and it's sort of like, it's like from the perspective of this Welshman who's like saying all the things that are wrong with the English, but then at the end it like turns it around and it's like, but you sit there complacent and you do the same things, and like, where does your tobacco come from? It comes from England, that sort of thing. Can't remember the poem, otherwise I would read it. So there's like that contradiction at the heart of like his Welshness. There's like this, he has such passion and love for his country, but also he is like railing against it in some ways. There's that contradiction at the heart of like his learnedness. Like sometimes it's like he views himself better than these people because he has all this knowledge and education, and then other times he so wistfully wants to be one of them and to shrug all this off. And then there's that thing at the heart of his religion where like sometimes he seems to hate God and rail against him, but then there are other poems where you can really see like the love of God coming through. I'm not a religious person, however I did find reading these poems to do with his relationship with his religion so compelling because they are so fraught, and it's almost that thing where like I don't know, in many ways I have a great respect for him persevering in his faith, and I don't want to sound really condescending or anything like that to people who are religious, that's not my aim here, I mean no disrespect, it's just like to read these poems from a man that is so clearly feels tested but perseveres with his faith is to me something that I find very touching to read. You know, this is not something that seems to come easily to him. This is something that he seems to really honestly struggle with, but yet he keeps coming back to it, and it's almost like him writing these poems is him trying to work through these things. I don't know. A lot of this stuff I'm basing, I have, apart from those few tidbits I've told you, I actually don't know a lot about R.S. Thomas as a person. These are not always my favourite poems. Some of these I just read and I was like, this is fine. But some of these really did, like, make me think about things. I also found the final poem in this collection, honestly, really got me. It's called A Marriage. We met under a shower of bird notes. 50 years passed, love's moment in a world in servitude to time. She was young, I kissed with my eyes closed and opened them on her wrinkles. Come, said Death, choosing her as his partner for the last dance. And she, who in life had done everything with a bird's grace, opened her bill now for the shedding of one side no heavier than a feather. And I was not prepared for that poem, to be honest with you. I was like reading all these poems and I was like, ooh, religious turmoil, ooh, connection with country, ooh, like envious of peasants, and then I was like, oh god, loss of one's wife. Oh. So that poem also was really beautiful and I found it really affecting. This is a bit of a drabble. I'm not doing like a formal, like, let's dive into all of the poems individually and do a little exploration and stuff. I read this because my partner lent it to me and he lends me quite a lot of books and I read them and we have talks about them and it's really fun to do. This is one that I felt compelled to just sort of like put some thoughts into a little video. I would love to know if anyone else has read his poetry, if you connected with any of these themes, or are there other themes in them that you connected with. Like, I definitely don't feel like I've picked up on everything that's going on in this collection just from one read through, but I don't know, poetry is not something that I read the hugest amount of, but sometimes you find certain poets that really they make you think of things, and they make you think of things beyond when you're just reading the poem. They make you think of things continuously afterwards and that sort of thing. And I just find that some pieces in this collection have really connected and made me think about things that I don't really have much of a connection to. I'm not Welsh, I'm not religious, that sort of thing, and yet I am so compelled by these journeys he's going on with himself, that sort of thing. I don't know. I just had a really fun time reading this. I found it really enjoyable and like it's made me think about a lot of stuff. I would love to hear from you. Number one, Have you read R.S. Thomas? Do you consider yourself a fan? What are your favourite poems? I'd love to know. But also number two, if you've got this far and you've never read any of his poetry, like number one, like gold star, thank you for your commitment to watching my videos. But I would love to hear from you whether there are poets who, what are your favourite poets, like, and why? Like, why do you connect to their poetry? What is it that, like, brings you back to it? That sort of thing. I want to consume poetry more regularly than I do, but I am also aware that poetry is something that I like to take my time with. So I don't have a huge amount. I have, like, one poetry collection left to go through, and then I'm, like, all out of poems. So if there were any recommendations you had, I would really love to hear them. But otherwise, that's everything I wanted to talk about this week. I hope you're having the loveliest of days, and I will see you next time for something different.